and we need to get back to the principles of international law, really, don't we?
Proper international law.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, the BBC yesterday had Admiral Alan West, is it Alan West?
Yeah.
Yes, on, and well, I'm going to comment on the BBC here, but in order to set the context, we need to sort of get a feeling for what Alan West said. So let's have a listen to this.
Yes, President Assad is in the process of winning this civil war, and he was about to take over and occupy Douma, all that area. He'd had a long, hard slog, slowly capturing that whole area of the city. And there, just before he goes in and takes it all over, apparently he decides to have a chemical attack. It just doesn't ring true. It seems extraordinary because clearly he would know that there's likely to be a response from the Allies. What benefit is there for his military? Most of the rebel fighters, this disparate group of Islamists had withdrawn. There were a few women and children left around. What benefit was there militarily in doing what he did? I find that extraordinary. Whereas we know that in the past, some of the Islamic groups have used chemicals, and of course there would be huge benefit in them labeling an attack as coming from Assad. Although we do know that the reports that came from there were from the White Helmets, who, let's face it, are not neutrals. You know, they're very much on the side of the disparate groups who are fighting Assad, and also the World Health Organization doctors who are there. And again, those doctors are embedded in amongst the groups, doing fantastic work, I know, but they're not neutral.
So that's a couple of short excerpts from the interview with Alan West, and it's good to see an establishment figure raising these concerns.
I think it's quite extraordinary, Mike, because many people would say that Admiral West has not been at his best in speaking out on some matters of international politics, but here he's going into this in quite some detail. What reason would Assad have for doing this when he was already winning the war? That's a very powerful question, and one which certainly the BBC itself doesn't want to ask. Why would he do it? And of course, he's also here pointing a finger at the White Helmets and saying very clearly these people are not impartial. They're working with, well, probably he would say the rebel movement. We would say actually these are partly Western-sponsored terrorists, but he's pointing it out.
Absolutely. Now, the BBC wasn't terribly impressed by that. Let's see what they had to say to him then.
We know that the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said on Friday, or accused a Western state on Friday of perhaps fabricating evidence in Douma or somehow being involved with what happened in Douma. Given that we're in an information war with Russia on so many fronts, do you think perhaps it's inadvisable to be stating this so publicly, given your position and your profile? Isn't there a danger that you're muddying the waters?
So I think we're getting a clear insight there into the mindset of the BBC. The question in my mind is, have BBC journalists been briefed to the effect that we are in an information war with the Russians, and therefore if we say anything which is beyond the government narrative, that we're playing into the hands of the Russians? Is that what they've been told?
That's exactly what they've been told, Mike. And of course, as we and many other people have said over a very long time, the BBC is just part of the British government's propaganda machine. So the British public hasn't been told that there's an information war going on. The term war, I think, is very significant. We're now not talking about a few bombs on Syria. That's how the government likes to think about it. It's just a few air-launched weapons. Now the BBC is telling us essentially we're at war. But no debate in Westminster. The British public not told. This is immensely dangerous stuff.
Well, absolutely, and of course, as they're saying in the chat box, it's not we that are at war. It's the BBC. It's the mainstream media. It's not the rest of us. But we mentioned a little video clip that the BBC produced, a couple of minutes of absolutely egregious propaganda over what happened at the weekend. And if you remember, the second half of it included a little piece of music. It had James Mattis on it, and then it went into various Twitter quotes and so on. I'm not going to play the music again because, well, surprisingly enough, Brian, we got a copyright strike on that on the YouTube feed, as you can see at the bottom there. It turns out that the music that they chose to show the the next steps, as it were, was a piece of music called War Plan. I don't believe that was coincidental. They absolutely chose a piece of war, a piece of music which would instill, the ideas of war and emotion into people.
Yeah, it was very dark, emotive music, which was clearly designed to have a psychological effect on the audience actually looking at the rest of the material.
Yes. Now, another day, another attack. Of course, over the weekend we had the front page Times expose in inverted commas of Piers Robinson, Tim Hayward, and Vanessa Beeley. Front page article plus 4 articles inside plus an editorial. Well, now the BBC's getting in on it as well, and here's Michael Wendling, who contacted Vanessa Beeley this morning and said, "Dear Ms. Beeley, my team is currently preparing a report on influential social media commentators on the Syrian conflict and recent alleged chemical weapons attack to be published on BBC News website. Your Twitter account has been identified as a key influencer on Twitter. I'm obliged to give you a further chance to comment and the opportunity to answer some questions and give some contact details." So let's see what the questions are. Do you believe that the alleged chemical attack in Douma was staged, a false flag event, or even faked? Same question re the chemical attack in Khan Shaykhun on April 2017. Would you describe yourself as a, quotes, independent journalist? Are you in favour of the current military action being carried out by the Syrian government and its allies? In a report, the Syrian campaign stated that you have publicly called for white helmets to be considered legitimate military targets 7 times, that you're part of a coordinated disinformation campaign, and that you described a meeting with President Bashar al-Assad as your proudest moment. Are these statements true? According to the website Media Bias Fact Check, 21st Century Wire publishes conspiracy theories and pseudoscientific stories. Do you have a response to this analysis? Have you or 21st Century Wire received funding for your work from the Syrian government or its allies? We plan to publish this story tomorrow, apparently on the BBC News website. So if you could get back to him by the end of the day, it'd be much appreciated. So those